is to devote much of your life to working. Whether working for compensation or working just to serve others and to fulfill yourself, work, work, work is the reality of human beings. And again, if you are a Christian, you will also know the doctrine that was very much explained by St. John Paul II in his encyclical called Labora Exercens, which was first preached by St. Paul II, 1928, that work is the way for most of us, from 98 to 99% of human beings who are not religious, who do not have the vocation of priests and bishops, that 99% of human beings, like us, ordinary citizens, will go to heaven through our work. Sanctifying the work itself, sanctifying ourselves as we work, and sanctify the people around us in work and bringing them to heaven with us. So that is what I can say about work. And therefore, every one of you will have to take very seriously how well you work and what is your motivation for working. Obviously, there are many motivations, hierarchy of motivations when we work. The moment you become a professional, obviously a very important motivation is for you to support your family. I expect the majority of you to get married. Therefore, you have to financially support that family. And the way you do that is working. We also work because we enjoy what we do. So that's another reason why we work. Called interior motivation, so-called hygiene factors, the psychologists call them. And I want to remind you that you may interpret wrongly
Oh, what happened?
Dr. Villegas? Casey, you're the host now. Ano po nangyari?
Nakamute ba po?
unmuted me. Oh, now, I'm unmuting myself. Okay. That happens from time to time. Someone mutes the speaker without the speaker knowing it, no?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So make sure that no one mutes me.
Dr. Villegas, my apologies po. I didn't know. I was the host, but I didn't know what happened. I didn't meet you po. Sorry po for the interruptions.
It's okay.
You can now proceed po. Thank you.
I don't notice whether I'm muted or mute. Okay, but no harm done. So let me clarify in case some of you may be laboring under the assumption that if our first parents did not eat the apple, we would be spending all of our lives in the beach, resting, watching Netflix movies, etc., etc. And that because our first parents disobeyed, then God punished them and told them to work. That's a completely wrong interpretation of the Old Testament. Even before what we Christians call the original sin, the disobedience of Adam and Eve, our first parents, in their state of perfection before they disobeyed God, were already working, because that's exactly the first command that they got from God. Increase and multiply and dominate this planet, this universe. And that meant a lot of work. But the difference was, before they disobeyed God, every second of their work was pleasurable. It was something that gave them full satisfaction. What was the result of their disobedience? Well, you know exactly what God told them when he was banishing them from paradise. He told them, from now on, from the sweat of your brow, leisure, which means the punishment was not work. The punishment was the perspiration, the boredness that now accompany work. Before, those problems did not exist. Now it exists. And so we can really say that there are moments so tired, we're bored, but we can also say that we are objective. That many of us has reached a point when we find much of the work we do pleasurable. We're looking forward to be able to work. And that is precisely part of our effort to make sure that our finding pleasure in work counteracts the sweat, the perspiration, the boredom. And we are not tempted to abandon work because of perspiration, because of sweat. However, I'm supposed to talk also about leisure. Let's make sure that we don't become workaholics. And you know, before the pandemic, that was a serious problem of many parents, both husbands and wives, because nowadays both husbands and wives work. Sometimes they could not strike a good balance between home and work. One of the positive effects of the pandemic is that more and more, a lot of parents are able to spend quality time with their children because they're at home most of the time. So the problem of this contradiction between work and home is less. I'm not saying that it has disappeared. It's possible that a parent may be at home, but he or she is just fixed on her computer, his computer, is not paying attention to what the children are doing. It's possible, but it's less possible now that the whole family is at home. They can look at the welfare of another a lot more easily. And that means, obviously, that all members of the family have to make sure that it's not all work, work, work 24 hours a day. That they do have moments of relaxation. And I mentioned, for example, Netflix, and there's so many very inspiring films, but you have to be very choosy because there are also some very bad films that you can choose. Too much violence, too much sex, but at least we have a choice. And then physical exercise, even just within your garden, if you cannot go out because of the pandemic. But I'm just saying that leisure and rest are part of our obligation to work. If we don't spend some time for leisure and rest, we will become very ineffective during our hours of work. Now, let me just give you a few ideas about the future of those of you who are centennials, and just in case some of the people here are millennials. The millennials are those who were born from 1980 to the year 2000. The centennials are those born after 2000. And so I'm sure there are people listening to me who belong to this category. You are going to face a bright economic future. Despite the short-term problem of the pandemic, 2021, 2022, we will still be struggling to recover. Starting 2023, we will be one of the most attractive economies in the whole world, according to outside opinion. I'm not telling you a self-serving propaganda from our government. I'm telling you about what many think tank institutions from abroad are saying. The Philippines is going to be one of the most progressive economies in the next 10 to 20 years. And that is when you will be reaching your adulthood, your professional success, the peak of your career. Why? Why are we now being singled out as one of the most promising economies in the world today? When just 20 years ago, we were referred to as a sick man of Asia. So we who were born in the 50s, 60s, even the 70s, were very unlucky. We saw the Philippines transitioning from one of the most promising economies in the 50s and the 60s. And again, these were outsiders saying that only next to Japan, we would be developing the best. But it did not happen because of all sorts of mistakes that our leaders made. And by the end of the last century, we were the so-called sick man of Asia. So we were unlucky. We had a generation which had too many mistakes. But thanks to a slow progress in our institutions, our central bank, our fiscal managers, our now build, we are beginning to improve our infrastructure. The Philippines is going to be very attractive because of three basic foundations. The first and the most attractive precisely has to do with you, centennials and millennials. What is that? We have a young, growing, and English-speaking population. That's an asset no other country has in any part of the world. Young, growing, and English-speaking population. That makes us very competitive, first of all, in sending 10 million of our Filipino workers all over the world. And I'm sure you recently heard Pope Francis jokingly telling overseas workers, you overseas workers, you smuggle the Catholic faith into many countries. And it is true, whenever I visit Dubai, Qatar, and all these places, I see all the Filipino Catholics crowding the churches there and giving a tremendous example about how to live Christianity in these countries. And not to mention in Spain, in France, in Belgium, it's the overseas workers who practice their faith a lot better than the ones who are residing there. I heard Tita Lita saying she studied in Madrid. I lived for about 2 years in Spain, and unfortunately, Spain today is more a pagan country than a Christian country. Unfortunately, we have to pray for the Spaniards. They're the first one to introduce same-sex marriage. Abortion is going around. 50% of the marriages end up in divorce, and a lot of people don't even bother to get married. They just live it. Let's pray for the country that brought Christianity, and I'm sure God will be merciful to them and change their culture. But I'm just mentioning that to tell you how lucky we are that we can earn $33 billion a year from our 10 million people all over the world, 200 countries all over the world. That was mentioned by Cardinal Tagle, because we have a young, growing, and English population. And the second asset that we have because of that young, growing, and English-speaking population is our business process outsourcing IT sector. And I'm sure many of you will end up in IT. So I'm encouraging a lot of you who have the necessary intelligence to take up courses related to information technology, to data science. These are the sectors that will employ a lot of you if you are qualified. And that sector of 1.2 million workers right now is earning $23 billion a year. So those two, overseas workers, BPO IT, are because of our young and growing population. The second strong foundation we have is geographically, we are in the epicenter of the most dynamic economic region in the world, which is called Indo-Pacific, with three territories that will lead the world in growth: China, India, and the ASEAN Economic Community. I hope you're already aware that there is an ASEAN organization, 10 countries to which we belong. And that is going to compete with China and India in economic dynamism. And we are right smack in the middle of that territory. And the third reason is, again, precisely because of your age. In the next 5 years, our economy will be transitioning from what is called a low middle income economy, which means less than $4,000 per capita. And I hope you understand the terms I'm using. Otherwise, I would be disappointed that you have not taken your economics course seriously. per capita income of $4,000 is the threshold to become an upper middle income economy. And we will be that in the next 5 years. In fact, we could have graduated to that status in 2020, but the pandemic did not make it possible. But it will take 3 to 5 years to catch up. In 2025, 2026, where many of you may still be in college, we will already be an upper middle income economy. That means our per capita income will be more than $4,000 a year. And that is the period in which a country literally explodes industrially. The demand for all types of consumer products will just increase by geometric progression. And that is the future we are facing. So you better be very serious about what you are doing now, so you will have all the necessary talents and skills to take advantage of that very promising future of the Philippines. But let me end so that we can have a conversation by telling you also that I hope some of you will not have the bias that we Filipinos have against blue collar work. Blue collar work is as dignified as any white collar job. What are these? Electricians, carpenters, mechanics, plumbers, agribusiness technicians. We need a lot more of this in the coming years than we need accountants. I can say that because I'm an accountant. Like one of the mentors, I'm a CPA. But I definitely would advise someone who's attracted to being a plumber to give plumbing a priority over becoming a bookkeeper, because there's tremendous shortage of technical workers in this country. That's very funny. We have a lot of young people, but we don't have enough electricians, plumbers, mechanics, etc. Why? Because your parents and you are so biased against working with your hands. Now, if any one of you have any inclination towards being a mechanic, being a carpenter, please don't have a feudal mindset thinking, oh, it's not dignified enough. In developed countries like the United States, where I also lived, a plumber can have more reputation and dignity than many lawyers. In the US, I saw families treating their plumbers with so much delicacy and tact. They would call their plumber, sir, could you please come to our home? Because if they mistreat their plumbers, you know exactly where they will be swimming. And that's true in all developed countries, that to work with one hand is not looked down upon. So that's one of the things I would like to address those of you who are going to be in senior high school. If you have an inclination towards working with your hands, in the future, a plumber may make more money than an ambulance chasing lawyer. I have nothing against lawyers, though, but I just want to make sure that the glamorous professions will also include those technical skills like electromechanical skills. In fact, I would suggest some of you males who are now listening to me and are in senior high school, please look at Dual Tech as a school where you could enroll after senior high school, and you will be an outstanding electromechanical worker, and you can make 300,000 pesos a year more in your first year of work. Because now factories and all sorts of industries appreciate a lot electromechanical skills. I think I've exploded enough bombs. I'm sure some of you will have many questions and even objections. But let me stop here so that Dr. Torralba can manage our dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Actually more significant than the commentary of Dr. Villegas would be his answers to the questions that we might pose. No, so I have two suggestions. I have one suggestion first, that you put your questions in the chat box, but please try to raise your hand. And if KZ could put Dr. Villegas and the one who would ask the question orally, if you could spotlight them,
Of course, Doc.
yeah.
Sure po.
But let's try to keep the question short, and Dr. Villegas will answer very succinctly, briefly but to the point, so that we can have as many questions as possible. But don't hesitate to put your questions as well in the chat box. Okay, any raising of the hand, and maybe well, as announced earlier, it would be good if many of you, if all of you, can put on your camera, whether you will raise your hand or not. So, Ms. Casey, any raised hand?
So far po, Doc, wala pa po. Parang nahiya pa po ata sila.
Okay.
Or,
Kahit
ayun po,
wala,
Tita
gusto mo
Cheat.
ano?
Tita Cheat.
Yeah, I would like to
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
the first question.
Please.
Dr. Villegas, in Bicol, I have been
Dr.
promoting
Villegas,
dual tech.
Pakipin si Dr. Villegas.
I'm sorry.
The one asking the question.
Okay. I'm Chit Hidalgo.
Yes, yes.
So I have been promoting dual tech quite aggressively here in Bicol.
Very good.
And I must say that I have been able to, help a lot of families also
That's-
improve their standing because of the training that their children have learned, especially the values that the children have learned from the Dual Tech Center. My question is this. Again, I'm in Bicol, and we have a state college that offers engineering courses. But I find that with engineering courses that they offer, it will really be purely theoretical.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so my question is this: would it be a good move for senior high school graduates to try going to dual tech before they even go to engineering? So that's my question.
In fact, they may not go to engineering anymore after they go to dual tech, and they are employed by some of these top multinationals in the field of electromechanical engineering. They will already make a lot of money that they may think engineering is no longer relevant to their long-term career. But some of them can actually use the ladderized system. So they start working and they take part-time courses in engineering, which has happened. I'm sure you've heard that from the dual tech management. A good number of their graduates start working, and then even though they already have a family, they start taking some credits for engineering, because there's a ladderized method. Once you graduate from a TESDA school, you can still go to college. But a number of them don't even think of a college degree anymore. And especially now, a lot of the companies have built-in courses in their respective industry that will add more and more to the knowledge and skills of the dual tech students. And what is more relevant right now are the skills that your industry is imparting in you, and not going to another academic program that, as you said, will again be too theoretical. So, but I would also suggest that in your university, why don't you start something like what we have in UNP? It's called the 6YP. So we call senior high school junior college. So, and in the junior college, you can already transform it into a dual tech curriculum and make it a TESDA, because as you know, senior high school has several tracks, and one of them is TESDA. So you will do a lot to the Philippine economy if you can contribute those people going into junior high school already taking a TESDA track and becoming electromechanical technicians and other types of technological skills. We are now trying to encourage people to introduce what is known as agribusiness technician. Let me explain. Some of you might have become plantitos and plantitas during the pandemic, no? So many of you have used part of your time in growing, red lady papaya, all types of vegetables, and so on and so forth, using the technology that is very abundant right now with harvest, with East West seeds. We need a lot of people who can help people like you investing in high value crops to be the technicians who know all about drip irrigation, who know all about what pests are going to be expected, and so on and so forth. Because I've seen a number of these plantitos and plantitas, because they have done their work amateurishly, really losing their shirt, investing and then not making money because they did not do a real professional job. And that can be solved if you have agribusiness technician who for 2 years will immerse themselves in technologies of growing high value crops. And I think there will be a new occupation that will be like plumbing, being a mechanic, being carpenter. We will now have agribusiness technicians.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Villegas. Casey, two comments. One is maybe we can alternate questions in the chat box and questions asked orally. And those who would like to ask questions orally, I mean, feel free to say personal things about your doubts, about your anxieties in relation to going into college. Okay, but Dr. Villegas, just as an information, one graduate of dual tech who proceeded to engineering is now the Dean of Engineering in a university.
Very good.
So, Casey, and who would read the questions in the chat box? One at a time.
Doc T, we have Jana Balanza po at the moment. Sabi po niya, hi Dr. Villegas, do you think people frown upon arts-driven career choices like multimedia, arts, design, fine arts, and etc.? Parents don't often support their children because they think it's not a financially wise decision.
That's a big mistake, especially now. In fact, one of the areas where Filipinos are singled out as very talented are precisely in multimedia, animation, creative industry. In fact, part of the so-called knowledge-intensive sector of BPI IT is called the creative industries, where you mix digital skills with artistic talents. And we have definitely some of the best that are the ones who are actually doing the anime for Japan. Many, many Filipinos are the ones creating multimedia and other types of art-oriented forms for multinationals. So definitely parents are behind the news if they think people who take art are not going to be compensated very well. So can you imagine all of this animation? I'm sure many of you have seen very beautiful animated films. Many of them were done by Filipinos. We have skills in those sectors. So those of you with artistic inclinations, think of the creative industry. That is now a new sector in Philippine business. It's called the creative industries. And let me just market one of our most popular courses in UNP. It's called Integrated Marketing Communication. For those of you who are going to college, think of the IMC in UNP. They have produced some of the most outstanding professionals for our advertising companies, for our marketing companies, for our creative industries.
And there are 2 degrees earned, one a US degree and another a Philippine degree for those who take up masters. No, Dr. Villegas?
Correct, correct.
Okay, so Casey, from someone raising the hand. No one, no one.
No
Go.
one po. Ayan po, si Heber.
Heber, go Heber.
Good morning po, Doc Villegas. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to ask my question. So, currently po, I am planning to pursue data sciences
Very good.
because it is, I think it is the most economically stable category that I can pursue. And do you think that it will continue to be that way in the future?
not only continue, it will actually be more and more and more lucrative. Because as you've heard today, data is gold. And those who know how to analyze, interpret, and present data are going to be in great need in a data intensive world. So definitely, I encourage you to take up data science. And again, if you are not in a hurry, you first take an undergraduate course that will give you a lot of these humanities subjects that I was referring to, so that you don't become too calculus, mathematics oriented, because that's a disadvantage. You become too just mathematics oriented, and you don't have the other skills that are developed by literature and so on and so forth. You will not be a balanced professional. So take a college course first, whether it be in one of the specializations, and then there's a master's program in UNP called Masters in Business Analytics, and you can take that even if you're working. Actually, what were you thinking of taking your data science course? UP?
Actually, I am choosing between PUP or UP, but I think I'm going for I'm trying to go for UP.
Okay, yeah, that's also okay, but make sure that you balance your very specialized subjects with the liberal arts.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Miss Casey.
Yes
Chatbox.
po. Thank you po, Dr. Villegas, about that. Camila po has a question. Hello, Dr. Villegas. What's
Hello.
the best senior high school strand for any course to take in college?
I beg your pardon. What is the best what?
High school, Strand.
Ito po.
Senior high
What's the
school.
best senior high school strand for any course to take in college?
The that has to do with the liberal arts and humanities, because if I said you will need critical thinking skills, a tremendous ability to communicate, and so on and so forth, and that is the strand that gives you all those skills is the liberal arts and humanities strand.
Regardless of what one will take up for college, Dr. Villegas.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Even take up medicine, definitely, especially since medicine, as you've seen, is more a human art rather than science. People with strong foundations in humanities are going to be better doctors than those who immediately take a lot of subjects.
By the way, Dr. Villegas, the one who asked the question, just finished one course of Spanish.
Now, very well. So that's the humanities, languages. Yeah.
Spanish language, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Casey, any raised hand?
Si Ate Joanna po.
Sino po?
Ate Joanna.
Ate Joanna.
Yes po, she's raising her hand.
Yes.
Ayun. Hi po, good morning po, Dr. Villegas. Good morning po, everyone. I have a question lang po. I'm currently a third-year communication student in Colegio de San Juan de Latran in Intramuros, Manila. And right now po, isa rin po sa online class po na yung setup po ng study namin ngayon. And next year po, most probably, ang sabi po sa amin, parang online class pa rin po kami. And most probably po, yung OJT namin, gagawin po namin siya online since nasa fields po kami ng arts. And siguro yung question ko po, question rin po ito ng mga ibang kabatch ko kasi gusto ko lang po malaman, like, is it wise po ba na mag-continue pa rin po mag-enroll next year and finish our OJT online? Kasi parang isa rin po sa problem ko, baka po kasi after namin graduate, like which is 2022 po, baka po since marami nga mahirap po mag-hire ngayon ng employee, medyo mahirap po maghanap ng trabaho based sa experience sa ibang tao. Baka po hindi po maging worth it yung pag-graduate namin next year at baka maging isa lang po kami sa mga graduates na hindi po agad makakahanap ng trabaho. Ano po kaya yung pinaka-wise na decision? Mag-continue pa rin po or antayin po na matapos yung pandemic then saka po magtuloy para po ma-spend po yung OJT ng mas maayos?
And maybe Dr. Villegas, maybe you can the question can be expanded to include what are your projections of education, college education especially, and even high school education in the next 2 3 years vis-a-vis the pandemic?
I think physical classes will already be possible second half of 2022. So we'll by that time have herd immunity and physical classes, and we need really to introduce physical classes. Online learning very limited in how it can develop a lot of personal skills. No? You need face-to-face meetings, no? And that is why I would be one of the first leaders to put pressure on our government to allow physical classes by the second half of 2022. By that time, probably 60% of our population will be vaccinated, and that means herd immunity, and that means physical classes can already be held without too much danger. But having said that, I want you, the students, as well as your parents, not to hesitate to be vaccinated. Just yesterday, I was vaccinated with Sinovac, no? And
Oh,
it's going to be my second dosage. Please convince everyone. And the first vaccine is the best vaccine. Don't wait for Moderna, all this Pfizer with 90% effectiveness. You never really know what those effectiveness is. Just take the first vaccine that's available. And it's already shown that no one gets harmed. I have already dozens and dozens of relatives and friends who have been vaccinated with Sinovac. Not a single one of them even felt any headache immediately after the vaccination.
okay. So, chat box question.
Thank you po, Dr. Villegas. Sa chat box po, meron po tayo, sabi po ni Maki Trinidad. Good morning, Dr. Villegas. What can you say about the people who lose their motivations on doing jobs which was to their likings before?
Well, it's a matter of having a mentor, and if you have a spiritual director, that will also help. Asking him or her what you have to do to regain your motivation. It could be just a simple problem of having been depressed by the pandemic. If unfortunately it is a more serious problem of a real depression, then you have to consult a psychiatrist, someone who can help you get out of that depression. But I think getting motivation is a matter of being encouraged by someone who can guide you. And I'm glad that all of you have been exposed to the method of mentoring. You have mentors. It's very important to talk to a person, unburden yourself, ask what's happening to you, and be very sincere. And then you'll be given the advice. And most of the time, it's nothing something serious. No? Most of the time, you don't have to go to a psychiatrist. Just an advice from an older person, someone with more experience, can help you get out of a serious, let's say, loss of motivation.
Dr. Villegas, I actually have a follow-up question po from me po. Since this pandemic, I've been personally having hard time keeping my motivation and being effective. So what would be the simple self-practice that everyone could do to maintain their effectiveness and their motivation po ba?
I will just repeat, on your own, it's very difficult to lift yourself from the bootstraps. You always need guidance from someone who is more experienced, wiser. So don't hesitate to look for an advisor. Be humble enough to know you cannot solve all your problems. So this idea of being able to restart yourself, that doesn't work. You need advice from someone else.
Thank you po.
Easy.
Next, we have po...
Okay, hold on.
Yes po, Doc. Next po, Doc.
Since we're talking of mentoring, the one in charge of mentoring in South Ridge is here now. One of your one of the mentors, no? Si Tito Ariel. Actually, he washes off all the problems of lack of motivation because of Ariel, no? And he uses very effective soap powder. Ariel, Tito Ariel, go. Could you introduce yourself? Where you finished high school, where you finished college, your course, and then
Yes,
your
please. And Tito
course.
Ariel, what would be some ano po ba,
Kasi
advices din po?
yeah, at saka marami din yung mga devices. Go, Kuya Ariel, Tito Ariel, go.
Thank you, Doc. Incidentally, I am no longer connected with Southreach full-time, but part-time as a mentor, and also part-time helping Dual Tech, which Dr. Villegas is promoting right now. And yes, there may be volunteers, especially for male students in Southreach. And you can also ask for volunteers from Dual Tech mentors for male students. Sorry, girls, we don't have enough mentors for girls, but we have enough here in the Zoom now. So let me know. Lita Cheat knows my contact number in case you need that. No?
Okay, so pero Tito Ariel, yung career mo, where you finish college?
I finished college, industrial engineering from Adamson University.
Okay, course.
Industrial engineering.
Industrial engineering. Wow, that was a dream course in my time. And then your work, you eventually ended up in Southridge, no? For a long time.
Ended up, tama si Dr. Villegas kanina, good to take a look at blue-collar courses like electromechanics in Dual Tech. It's 3-in-1, electrical, electronics, and mechanical. And nowadays, there's a ladderized curriculum. You can work at the same time, take up engineering, and finish the degree in shorter than 5 years. You are good both in practical and theoretical plus work values. So if you need help in Dual Tech, I can also help.
Kasi mahalaga to na yung work values, no?
Correct.
Which is how people in Punlaan, Punlaan is for girls naman, ano?
Yes, Punlaan, Anihan.
You can find out about this by Googling. But anyway, this could be from your perspective of wanting to be scientists, etc. This could be a means for a first 2-year course because Dual Tech and Punlaan last for 2 years.
Okay.
So, yun. So, KZ, chat box or raising of the hand? Better raising of the hand na.
Yes po, Doc. We have po Ray Nante Miranda po.
Good morning po, Dr. Villegas. My question po is, in my elementary days, I had heard that the country is in demand of engineers, architects, doctors, and other white-collar jobs. And after hearing this, I might have set my career on becoming an engineer. Although I like becoming an engineer, my question is that okay to set a career path based on that?
Oh, definitely. I'm not saying we don't need engineers. We need a lot of engineers and other professionals. I'm just saying that if a person who's graduating senior high school has inclinations towards blue-collar work, like becoming a good mechanic, he should not hesitate just because of the bias the society have against these types of work. Let me tell you a personal story. Dr. Turalva has heard it many times. I have a sister who migrated to Toronto, Canada, 40 years ago. She passed away, but when her only son graduated from high school in Canada, he told my sister, "Mom, I don't want to be going to college. I just want to be a good mechanic." If my sister had stayed in the Philippines, she would have had a heart attack on that day. But no, because she was in Canada, she was very enlightened, and she said, "Go ahead." And now that nephew of mine is living in one of the most expensive apartments in the middle of Toronto, is earning 3 times a lot of white-collar jobs, and is so specialized in certain types of cars, like Honda, that he is sought after by so many clients. And he definitely is not an uncultured person. He can talk about Mozart, Beethoven, as any other college student could be. So my point is, blue-collar workers need not be thought of as poor, uncouth, uncultured individuals. It may be true in the past that only the very poor really became carpenters, and then the not very poor carpenters. They just did things that they learned from widow. But now carpentry can be a very demanding occupation with skills, like making very intricate furniture and so on and so forth. Well, remember, our Lord Jesus Christ was a carpenter, no? And if you saw that film series called Chosen, you would have seen him practicing his profession even while he was already preaching all over Palestine. No? So I just mentioned that the story of my nephew is a very educational story.
Thank you po, Dr. Villegas. I
Okay.
will...
Sorry.
Thanks for that.
But I'm not discouraging you from being an engineer. Definitely, we need engineers, no?
Yes
Okay.
po.
Chat
Okay
box
po.
or oral.
Um,
Anything now, and from mentors, from etc. Because this is a rare chance.
rare opportunity, yes. Dr. Villegas, someone direct messaged me po. Anonymous po ata siya. Ayaw niya magpakilala. But sabi, hello. Hello po, Dr. Villegas. I will be taking BS Air Transportation in college. Many people suggest that I instead take on another course. So I have a backup plan. And then later on go to flight school to pursue for a commercial pilot license. How important do you think backup plans are, and what do you suggest I do? Pursue BS Air Transpo or pursue another course?
Good.
Well, a backup plan is always useful, precisely because I said your generation will see many people shifting from one career to another, probably at least 3 to 4 times before you finally retire. And so I think it's always good to have something else that you may choose. Yeah. For example, if a person takes up engineering, then in the future he becomes attracted to growing high value crops in a piece of property that his family has in Batangas or Cavite, then he can always shift and he can accumulate the skills needed for growing high value crops very easily through some of these companies I referred to. And so he can abandon his old dream of being an engineer or whatever it is. So, and you're giving a perfect example. Someone majors in transport, I suppose it's transport engineering, but then he sees that he has skills to fly a plane. Well, as you know, a pilot makes a lot more money than many engineers. So that backup plan is very reasonable. I know specific persons who actually have shifted from such courses as accounting, law, towards becoming a pilot because they were interested in making a lot more money. So those are things that will happen in the future. So my advice is be very flexible. Don't get too attached to a very specific occupation and think you will do that for the next 50 years of your life.
Casey, I saw a question from Sam Moreno, but since she is here, maybe she wants to engage with Dr. Villegas through CAM.
Sige po. Mag-message sa akin directly if you want to ask follow-up questions kay Dr. Villegas and talk to him about something, you can just raise your hand.
Okay, so next, Casey.
Next po, Heber po.
Doc, ako naman po magte-take over para hindi po mapagod yung MC natin.
Okay, sige.
Question po from the chat box from Danga. Good morning, Dr. Villegas. I am planning to take up medicine in college. What are your thoughts in aspiring doctors po? Do you think medicine will continue to be on demand in the future?
Oh, even more. I think what the pandemic has taught us is we need a lot of workers in the health sector. Doctors, physical therapists, that's one of the results of the pandemic. And they will be better appreciated. They will be better remunerated because we have seen what it means to have a shortage of the people in the health sector. Yes, I encourage you. And it's not easy to get into medicine, many, many years. And times very demanding work conditions. You're exposed to all sorts of diseases. But I always say, because my father was a doctor, becoming a doctor is not just a matter of an economic decision. It's a matter of a human decision to care for others, even if you don't get enumerated. I saw my father treating so many poor people without asking for medical fees. So being a doctor is almost like becoming a priest. Now, obviously, we have to make sure we pay them well, otherwise they cannot support their families and forced to leave medicine. But medicine is one of the most noble professions you can get into because you're not there for the money only.
Okay, Heber, raised hand and question on site in person.
There's nothing at the moment po.
Okay.
From the chat po, meron po isa.
From the
From the chat box po.
gustong mag-raise ng hand. Sige po, go.
Ay, ano po, naka-type na po yung message. Babasahin na po. Good morning, Dr. Villegas.
Could you give
What,
the origin, the name of the person?
Sam Moreno po.
Okay. Ayun
good-
yung tanong ang question orally?
I
Sam?
I don't know po.
Or around?
Baka gusto niya po or ano po.
The chat. Okay, sige.
Good morning, Dr. Villegas. What do you say po to those who are aiming a career overseas?
Overseas, I
Yes
encourage,
po.
I encourage them. Definitely, we have to think of the Philippines as one of the sources of workers to help those countries that are having a difficult time because they are disappearing from this planet. They're not producing babies. They have people who are aging so fast and they don't have enough workers to take care of them, especially in the area of health. How many people died in Europe because there were not too many people to take care of them in the so-called home for the aged. And so the works of the Philippines would be to provide them with the workers that I need, and at the same time, of course, to give these overseas workers salaries that are higher than what they can get in the Philippines. So I'm not in any way against people migrating abroad because that is part of our solidarity with these poor countries that made a terrible mistake of birth control, and now they are kicking themselves saying, why did we limit our family sizes to only one or two? Now we are suffering tremendously. Japan, Korea, Spain, Italy, these are aging countries that are going to be in trouble because they don't have enough workers. And one act of charity a country like the Philippines can make is to provide them with those workers. And at the same time, provide these overseas workers reasonable salaries.
Okay, Heber, I'll ask Dr. Villegas a question, and then we have maybe 4 last questions. But before the 4 last questions, I'd also want to introduce the ATES. And if Rod Victa is here, Tito Rod is here. My question of Dr. Villegas is, Dr. Villegas, papaunlakin niyo po ba kami ng isang awit? Mamaya, konti.
Why not? Okay, later. Yes, yes.
Ayan, yun ang magandang sagot parate, ano, yung mga why not. So sana masagot nating madalas yung why not, no? Imbis na why, ganun. Heber, pakilala, andyan ba si Tito Rod o kung meron pang ibang mentors na nais nating ipakilala?
Let me check po.
At saka yung ate, si Ara nandito, si Joanna, at saka si Ciara.
Yes po, Doc. Nandito po ata sila, but we will finish po yung asking of questions. Si JM Almir na lang po yung last. So we have 1, 2,
May isa pa
and
sa taas, Casey.
Opo.
Si Shelo.
si
Okay.
Shelo. And I have a question as well. So after that, we may proceed dun sa pagpapakilala po sa mga titos and titas and ates.
Okay, and then
Yes.
go back to some questions if there are any more, no? So game, Casey, go. Ikaw ba yun?
I have a question po, Dr. Villegas. Yun po. I have a question. Ang problem po kasi, actually, bata pa lang po po ako, gusto ko na maging doktor. Yun na po talaga yung gusto ko sa life ko. But as I grow po, naisip po na since doctors po, demanding po yung career nila and wala ka po masyadong time sa sarili mo, I'm kind of worried po sa aking magiging time para sa family, future family ko po. So I initially want to be ortho surgeon, but then I now want to pursue yung dentistry po muna as my if ever pre-med po, if I want to continue pa yung medicine, or kung if I want to ano na po doon kunin na po talaga yun as my final career, I would have time for my family pa po. Do you think that's a good idea po ba in the future?
You asked the right question to the right person. My mother was a dentist.
Oh, okay po. Sakto.
And Bernie, how long she lasted in this earth?
Lived up to 102. And
Wow!
she had 7 children. And she never neglected us, even though she was very active as a dentist. In fact, some of the titas who said they graduated from Assumption, I don't know if they coincided with my mother, who was the school dentist of Assumption, Iran, and later Assumption San Lorenzo for more than 20 years. No,
They must have very good teeth, set
Yeah.
of teeth, Dr. Villegas.
admire Filipinas, and I refer also to all your titas, that in the world, we are the ones able to do multitasking. Our women are very good in being effective in different tasks. They know how to balance. Unlike many people in the West, they're always agonizing. Should I do this? And I may neglect this. No, the Filipino mother says, I can do all of them together and do them very well, as my mother did. And my mother, in addition to that, had 1,000 roses growing in her home. She was a super gardener. So that was the model of a Filipina woman. And I'm sure I can say that of all your titas, no? They can do many things at the same time without agonizing like the people in the Western world asking for women's liberation. You have to allow us to also be top executives. Well, they have not been as successful in becoming top executives as Filipinos are. The Philippines is one of the highest countries, percentage-wise, of women who become CEOs, finance managers, and so on and so forth, precisely because Filipinas are able to be good mothers and good professionals at the same time. So I encourage you to follow the example of Filipinas in the past.
Wow, thank you po. Ang iniisip ko po kasi
The
is... yes po, Doc.
mother raised her children well because Dr. Villegas, for the plantitos and the plantitas here, Dr. Villegas dabbles in gardening. And he ensures his continuing health by doing gardening every now and then. Okay, Casey, tuloy po. Sorry.
Sorry po, Doc. I was saying po kasi, since elementary, I'm working hard sa aking education para po magkaroon po ako ng magandang platform po pagpunta sa college. And I'm thinking na it's sad para sa mga ibang nanay na to stop their career dahil lang sa family nila. And ako, I wouldn't want na i-throw lang sa out of nowhere yung lahat ng efforts ko. So I want to keep my career, but I don't want naman to neglect my future responsibilities as a mother. Kaya po, I think yun po, maganda pong inspiration yung sinabi niyo po about your mother po and how she multitask everything po.
Yeah.
Thank you po.
A piece of advice is when it's time for you to get married, make sure to choose a man who will be understanding towards a mother who is working at the same time. So you don't have to work as long as your husband is understanding. And I know modern husbands are no longer some husbands in the past who always insisted, okay, you stop working because you have to now devote time to our children. That no longer is the mentality of a lot of modern men. So they know that their wives have as much, let's say, right to practice a profession. And now husbands are willing to share household work.
I
And
think that's good po para bond din po sa family.
of course. And that's why you have to be very choosy. Yeah?
Okay po, I will.
Okay,
Thank you po, Heber.
Heber, any other mentors to introduce?
Doc, actually wala na po ata na
So-
but may nag-message po sa akin na sabi po ni Tito Ariel, we'll leave for the meet now. For another meet, may iba po siyang quota.
Okay,
Thanks daw po.
Yeah, and then Ariel, you were raising your hand. Yung babay ba yan? Yung raising na yan ay babay. Okay. So si Tito Ariel ay nagbababay. Tapos let's take this opportunity also. Thank you. So babay, Kuya Ariel. May you
Thank you po, Tito Ariel.
manage to do household work such as laundering, no, using Ariel.
Let's promote my soap, laundry soap. I earned. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you po.
Thank you
Wow,
po.
Doc, medyo dumami po ulit yung, nadagdagan po yung message natin. Medyo gusto na po talaga nilang magtanong kay Dr. Villegas. Okay, Heber?
So bali po,
Sorry, Dr. Villegas, I guess this is the first time during the pandemic when the highest number of people for your talk increased after your talk. No? So, Heber, go.
from Shelo Brocoy po, good morning, Dr. Villegas. What do you think of taking a course related to education?
Wow.
like the profession of medicine, education is also a very noble profession. You are preparing the new generations of people who will continue to make our country progressive. So the educator, like the doctor, is there not only to make money, but to make a major contribution to society. Definitely, those of you who are attracted to education, I encourage you to get into it. You can go into education either by taking a course in a school of education or taking a professional course and then teaching the subject, whether it's economics, whether it's marketing. So there are several paths to the field of education. I'm an educator. In fact, if you ask me, what are you primarily? I consider myself first as an educator. But I took up accounting, I took up economics, and I can still understand these different sciences. But first and foremost, I consider myself as an educator, as we are now doing, actually involved in trying to educate you people.
Okay, Heber.
Thank you po. The next question from JM Almira. Medyo mahaba-haba po ito. So, good morning, Dr. Villegas. I heard that choosing your interest as your career would be great. That's why I am having a difficulty setting a career path because I am currently interested in political science and architecture. So what can you advise po for those people having difficulty setting their career path po? Thank you po. And may patagdag pa po, I mean to those people who can't choose between their choices po. What are your advice to them po?
Well, you just make a decision once you're ready to go to college of choosing one of your interests. There's another thing about young people now. They have many, many interests, and it's a good sign that they have a very wide range of topics that they have studied. If you're choosing between political science and architecture, in terms of the need of the country today, I would suggest that you take architecture because we will have a lot of build, not only of infrastructure, but of office buildings, residential, not in Metro Manila, but all over other areas that will become Metro Manila. Calabar Zone, Central Luzon, as far away as Bicol. Bicol can develop into an industrialized area. And we need a lot of architects, though. Political science, you can always learn. I'm sorry to say this. You can always learn by just reading. You don't really have to specialize in political science. So, and although we may need some people to analyze all sorts of political trends, usually the political science major, they follow through by taking up law. So I'm biased. If you give it two choices, political science versus architecture, I suggest you take architecture.
And Dr. Villegas, one of the guests in the near future of this type of session is Mayor Vico Soto, no?
Okay.
Who
Yeah.
learned governance, who learned politics, who learned political science by doing it.
Correct.
Okay, so Heber, last three questions. Sana merong raised hand din po.
Doc, magte-take over na po si Camila.
Okay, Camila, go Camila.
Hello po. So, meron naman po ditong nagtanong ng question anonymously. I have a course po that I want to study and learn about, but I don't really think I want that as a career po. And in that kind of situation po, what do you suggest po that I do? Do I still study that course po, or do I study a course po that I am fine with being my career? Ayan po.
It's very difficult to answer because I don't know which areas you are considering. It's too general. One course.
Baka gusto magtanong Camila, baka gustong itanong yung sabihin yung dalawang courses niya. Kung gusto hindi, we go to the next question.
Sige po. Sige.
Sure po. Sa nag-message sa akin, kindly message me so that more specific.
Go, Casey.
Let's wait for yung ano po niya, response po niya. Pero at the moment po, next question, Mila.
Okay, so yung next question naman po is nandito sa chat box. Mental health is usually neglected in our country. Kaya po I am interested with psychology. What are your thoughts po about taking up a course about psychology?
Oh, definitely. That will be needed. Unfortunately, as a country develops and there is more stress, more strain on professionals, almost inevitably, mental health is going to be challenged. And we need good psychologists and good psychiatrists who have a very strong foundation in the right kind of spirituality, who understands what a human being is. Because you can have psychiatrists who have a wrong definition of human being and may use Freudian analysis, all this, in my opinion, very incomplete ways of understanding a human being. So definitely, I suggest that you go into the field if you're attracted to it, but make sure you have the right philosophy and the right theology about what a human being is. So you can give the right advice.
Okay, Camila, last two.
Okay, eto po. Meron naman po nag-message ulit anonymously. Good morning po, Dr. Villegas. I'm both interested in literature and medicine. What do you think should I take up in college? Although I think I'm more inclined to choose medicine, but I would appreciate it to hear your thoughts. Thank you po.
You can take for your AB course in which there is a lot of literature. So it can be in AB, in the humanities, because pre-med can be taking many forms. And then after that, you go into medicine proper. So I don't think there's a conflict. Your pre-med course can be very intensive in literature as long as you take enough subjects in science that are required by medicine. So it's not an either or. You can still satisfy your interest in literature and sharpen precisely what I said is your critical thinking skills, your ability to communicate, your ability to relate one science to another, because that's what literature does to you. And then take up medicine proper after you have your AB.
Okay, Camila, last question, chat box question, and then we will gather. Casey, could you? We have been taking photos of the chat box, no? I mean, we are recording the chat box questions.
Yes po. I can copy paste them po, Doc, so we have the ano po, Yung pinaka nakasulat
We
po.
would want a record of that so that we can answer them through some means, no?
Sure
But
po.
one last question in the chat box.
Okay.
That would be the last question, unless there is somebody who is. No, I personally would like to see somebody raising his or her hand to ask questions. Anybody?
Ito po, last po sa sa chat box. Private message. Psychology, yung gusto ko pong aralin, pero ayokong gawing career. Tapos mechanical engineering yung ayos lang po sa akin na maging trabaho. Parang ano daw pong thoughts nyo tungkol po doon?
I didn't get the part.
If I'm not mistaken, Camila, yan yung kanina.
Ay okay. Tapos na ba? Okay. Thank you.
Hindi. Yung kanina yung tinanong ni Doc Tina kung ano daw yung dalawang course na yon, and yung tao na yung nag-message na sa akin and
Okay.
sabi niya
Okay.
psychology and ano.
Sige po.
At pwede na sagot na yun. Yeah?
And then mechanical engineering later?
Yes po.
Yeah. Well, the only difficulty there is that in psychology, you will not take differential calculus, you will not take linear programming, you will not take a lot of the mathematics courses required by engineering. So you'll be handicapped if you go to a school of engineering after that, because psychology is not quantitatively oriented.
Okay, so Camila, last question, chat box.
Tita Chief is raising her hand po, Doc.
Sige po, go.
Yeah. Okay, this is not a question. It's actually a follow-up to the student. Yeah, this is follow-up to the student who says that she's interested in literature and yet she wants to go into medicine. There's a famous writer, Dr. Luis Catmaytan, who writes fantastic children's books. In fact, short stories lang. He's a doctor. So that's how he teaches, children about medicine using simple stories and yet very scientific ang approach niya kasi doctor siya. So there, he's able to, to combine literature and medicine. So that's my, my follow-up, what's that? Thoughts about your dilemma.
Okay.
Thank you, Tita Chief.
And last question in the chat box now. Last. Wala na?
So
As of
far,
the moment po, parang wala naman po.
Pero someone dito who wants to raise their hand and get the last opportunity to ask Dr. Villegas.
Sino po?
Huwag na kayong mahiya.
Yeah, wag na kayong mahiya.
Mila, do you have a question? I think
Sige,
you have.
Sige po. Ako po, yung question ko po, paano kung yung gusto mo pong course na kunin is merong mga subjects na hindi mo strength, pero gusto mo po talaga yung course?
Again, subjects that?
Na hindi mo po strength, hindi ka po ganun ka nag-excel sa mga subjects na yun, sa mga fields na yun. Pero overall, gusto mo po yung course.
Well, you have to exert a lot more effort in those subjects in which you have difficulties, no? And that's where the idea of work, no? So, and you will always have the ability to excel in something, even if you don't have the aptitude for it, if you double your work effort. So that's where glad you mentioned that. So we go back to the value of work. So remember, success is very little inspiration, but more perspiration. So you just have to perspire more, and you will actually be pleasing your creator better than someone who is a genius and doesn't have to exert effort and gets very good grades easily and wastes a lot of his time. That person is not going to be pleasing to God.
Okay, so just to take this opportunity to introduce to you those who could be your friends that are slightly older than you and slightly younger than the mentors, no? Ito paki-pin kung pwede sina Ara, Joanna, and Shara or Ishi, and Ishi if they are here. Joanna, could you pin them? Not pin, spotlight.
Sure po, Doc.
Joanna, could you, if in case you see them, could you please?
Yes po, Doc. Kaso, Doc, wala po yata si Ate Shara and Ishi po.
Okay, so kayong dalawa na lang.
Yes po, kami lang po ni Ate Ara.
Okay. So anyway, in case you'd like some experiences to back up your thoughts and to back up what your older mentors would say, anyway, we shall give you starting next time yung mga mentors po na just slightly older than you. I mean, for this among the Ptolemy, you know that Ate Ara, Ate Aliana Dalisay, who is scheduled to give a talk on friendships and relationships, courtships, soon also to this session, are so disposed to help you. Okay, so pwede bang ilagay sila, ano? Pwede pang ilagay?
Pardon po, Doc.
No, just to pin them so that they are seen.
Sila
Nakapin.
Ate
Ano
Ara,
po?
Ate Ara, Joanna.
Nakapin na po sila po.
Nakapin, okay, sorry. All right.
It's
So
okay po, Doc.
yun po yung dalawang pwedeng tumulong, no? And if you want, well, they will communicate with you their contact details. Okay, so and then so thank you very much, Dr. Villegas. Napakalawak po ng sinakop nitong ating pag-uusap, and maybe we can have there are some final activities by the team of Casey, Heber, and Camila, but maybe we can have yung ano po a little song, Dr. Villegas.
Okay, so this is not just a song for the sake of the song. This is also delivering a message. People right now are so excited about BTS, Korean groups, all sorts of foreign groups in music, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I hope that the centennials in particular are also going back to what is our rich culture in music, which is the condiman. Some of you may not even know what a condiman is. And unfortunately, we are losing a very important part of Filipino culture. And so one of my campaigns is to get young people, first of all, to learn one instrument or another, the piano, the guitar. So we continue to be among the most musical peoples in Asia, which we were in the past. I remember every middle-class family would require all the children to take the piano or at least one instrument so we could read notes. That has been lost. But I hope that new generations can reintroduce that tradition. And among others, really rediscovering the beauty of the music of the Filipino composers like Boy Camino and so on and so forth. So I'm going to sing a typical condiman. Probably it's going to be the first time some of you youngsters will hear it, but it also goes to a very important message that I'm sure your mentors are giving you, for those of you who know that your vocation is going to be marriage, that every marriage is indissoluble. And so this song, A Condiman, speaks of only one love. Ang tangi kong pag-ibig ay minsan lamang, ngunit ang iyong akala ay hindi tunay, hindi ka lilimutin, magpahanggang libing habang ako ay narito at may buhay. Masdan mo at nagtitiis ng kalungkutan. Ang buhay kong unti-unti na pumapanaw. Wari ko ba sinta? Ako'y mamamatay kung di ikaw ang kapiling habang buhay. So I challenge the young people here, learn that song. You can always Google it and get the words and the music. At least one kundiman that you can add to your repertoire.
And Dr. Villegas, since they are all Generation Z, would you want to recommend good Korean dramas?
Well, I'm sure all of them have seen Chloe and Start Up and Itaewon. So those are the more typical Korean dramas with a lot of values. So they have values, without preaching. In fact, you also see the dark side of Korea, corruption, all sorts of vices like envy. But at the same time, you have some very noble characters. So I'm sure I'm not talking nonsense. Many of you have seen Crash Landing on You and all of these other films that I mentioned.
Okay, and maybe KZ Heber, before going to the last portion, could we just request everybody to please try to open your cameras so that we can have a good documentation picture of this, extraordinary day of Core Vitae. So please turn on your cameras.
Yes, please. Kindly turn on your cameras. And I just want to say, Dr. Villegas, that's a very good performance po. Thank you po.
Yeah,
Kami po ni Camila, we personally love music. Kasama po kami sa rondalya ng school po namin at the moment. And we try to keep the traditional way of playing music dun sa club namin ngayon. And I think I've heard of that po before.
Yes, yeah.
Opo.
By the way, Dr. Villegas, Muntinlupa Science has been champions of choir competitions in China, Korea, Japan 4 years ago. No, when Moonsai started. Okay, so Tita Evelyn, Ma'am Hambalos, Gabriel Mabansag, Nikos Beltran, could you just please turn on cameras and then hello, smile, but we'll take the picture anyway. Smile, hi. And there you are. And we'll go to page 2. And mas maraming hindi bukas. There you are. And last but not least, page 3. Nako, palang bukas. Okay. One last chance. Otherwise, we will publish this in Philippine Inquirer, yung mga ayaw. Okay. So, personal thanks, Dr. Villegas and KZ, Heber, and Camila. Any last thing? Go.
So, bali, ang gusto ko lang po sabihin, Doc, thank you po for Dr. Villegas for sharing your knowledge about career pathing. I've learned a lot and I've listed some important points and I think it will be useful in the future. And thank you po sa mga mentors for sparing your time for joining us today. Thank you po. And then sa mga ate natin, and thank you po. And then kay Doc T po, thank you for continuously supporting Muntinlupa Science High School. And syempre po, thank you po kay Ma'am Hambalos for accompanying us. And sa mga kapwa kong students, thank you for sparing your time. Ayun. And then, yun lang gusto kong sabihin. Thank you for sparing your time and I hope you did enjoy the session today. So, expect other topics for the next month. And yun lang.
Ang next month could either be Mayor Vico Soto or yung si Dr. Cecilia Resurrección on managing well-being. Not really mental health, but ensuring well-being. So, he's a very good psychologist, no? That according to Dr. Villegas is a very much needed profession now. So Dr. Villegas, paalam po at hanggang sa muling pagkakataon.
Yes po. Thank you for your time and your advice po, Dr. Villegas, and sa mga students, and titos and titas and ates, and Doc T, of course.
Good.
Stay safe po, everyone.
Thank you po. Thank you.
And have a great lunch.
Maraming salamat po.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one question. Dean Hermoso was the principal before Mrs. Diaz was asked to take over as in an acting capacity? Totoo ba yung nakalagay doon about Dean Hermoso?
Yes po, Doc.
Totoo po. Okay, so maybe we can spend the last minute just praying for the repose, tama, no?
Yes.
Of the soul of Dean Hermoso, who was principal before Ma'am Diaz, who was principal years back, was asked to take over, no? So could we just spend some moments of silence for the repose of the soul of Dean Hermoso, and then we'll pray the Our Father after just very few moments of silence. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
May the soul of Dean Hermoso rest in peace,
Amen.
and may the soul of Dean Hermoso again and all the faithful departed rest in peace.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so maraming salamat pong muli, Tita Chit, Ma'am Hambalos, all the other mentors, etc.
Thank you po, and hope to see you all again. Doc, nag-pick tayo 70 participants this meeting po.
Yes.
I'm so proud.
We will
Thank you,
prepare
and
100. Sana
see you
next
again next time.
Baka by next meeting na si Ma'am Diaz invited na natin. Medyo busy lang ngayon kasi siya na yung assigned OIC ulit ng principal
Yes,
ng
ma'am. Yun nga
site.
po.
Yeah, wow, thank you, ma'am.
Hindi natin yung cute na anak ninyo, ma'am.
Naglalambing po kasi.
Thank you.
Right.
Akala ko nga po si Miss Hambalos ay hindi naman Miss. Akala ko. Hindi ko akalain na ikaw pala ay may anak na. Kasing bata mo itong mga mentees namin.
MS. So lahat ng Muntinlupa Science ay
Love. Oh, love.
Okay. All right. Sige po. Thank you very much.
Salamat.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great lunch. Bye-bye. I hope you had lots of fun.
Bye, Casey.
Thank you. Thank you din po, Doc. Thank you, Camila and Heber.
Thank you.
Bye po. Thank you po.